Air is a mixture of many gases and dust particles. It is a clear gas in which living things live and breathe. Air is usually polluted by smoke or other harmful gases, mainly oxides of carbon, sulfur, and nitrogen. Even healthy people can experience health impacts from polluted air, including respiratory irritation or breathing difficulties during exercise or outdoor activities. In this webinar, our esteemed speakers will be sharing their views on the effect of fossil fuels on air and the impact of air pollution on human health, like airborne diseases, COVID 19 for one, and its aftermath. I welcome Dr. Suja, Dr. Amit, Dr. Vijay Shekhar, and our moderator, Mr. Raj Shekhar Rao, in this webinar. And I welcome all of you, all of the participants, to our Simple Talk 19 by CGBMT School of Simple Living. As I said, we have today Mr. Rajshekhar Rao, J. Rajshekhar Rao, an extremely multifaceted personality and a very dear friend of many years, moderating this webinar on an extremely important topic of impact of air pollution on our health in these troubled times of COVID-19. Just a few words about Raj. He is our quintessential go-to person and master of multiple trades. His energetic persona exudes the values he embodies and proliferates amongst the consent family. As the CSO, Raj steers his efforts with ethos and acumen while achieving business goals. Raj is a business leader with over 25 years of global experience. The roles he has donned in his previous works include director, business head, practice head, vice president, general manager at companies like Deolite, PwC, Genpact, Satyam, Utopia, L&T, ABB Linkman, Intelli, etc. A practicing humanitarian, TEDx speaker, winner of NASCOM Innovation Award, and new product initiatives, the list goes on. As a matter of fact, just few, I think, days back, last week, they got another, a big award for their startup and the product, Hilfa. His inspiration drives our work culture. He is a member of the advisory board of our CGBMT School of Simple Living and has been contributing actively to the organization. Over to you, Raj. Rajshekhar?
Muted. He's muted.
Good afternoon,
Raj,
everyone.
yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think not only the doctors, but today I am also struggling with technology today. It goes up. So thank you very much for organizing this CGBMT and the co-sponsors. It's my privilege and honor to be a part of this session. As Neelam mentioned, we want to make a difference to the lives of the people around us, not just high tech and very deep scientific research, but how simple things can matter. You know, Mother Teresa talked about, and there is one famous line which I would like to share with you. She always mentioned that we don't do great things. We do small things with a lot of love, tender, and care. And the small things make an impact on people's life. And I believe our research, all these things, if it can be simple, they can be understood by the common man. The millions and billions of common men and women around the world, by doing something small, it's always we should be trying to evangelize and advocate things which are simple. Simple things are understood, they are digested, and they can see what is the impact it can make. The more complex we make it almost impossible to imbibe and operationalize it. And we have today an esteemed panel who are scientists and very highly accomplished professionals in their field. But one common thread which runs across them are they demystify the whole big problem into simple things. And today, my urge to Dr. Amit, Dr. Vijay, and Dr. Shuja is enlighten us with your simple things coming from demystify the complex thing and share with us your wisdom on the simple talks, how we can make an impact on air, which is one of the largest issues which we are stuck with. We talk about Davos, we talk about Kyoto and all these things, but not happening. How you guys can give us the takeaways so that we can make an impact on life. So let me first introduce you to Dr. Amit Sethi. Dr. Amit Sethi is a professional who has been working in the oil and gas industry for many, many years. But more importantly, what I have seen him doing is he has been working with the environmental change and environmental impact, how to make spaces around us greener, how to make spaces around us cleaner. And it is starting at home. He always talks about small things which are happening in and around his area. And he's not the person who just goes to the conference, but I have seen him from New York. He comes back to Mumbai and implements these things. It's not just about giving sermons, but implementing it. That's something which I like about Amit Sethi. And he has made an impact to the locality and the community in and around him with his thought process. Amit, looking forward to hear from you. Share your wisdom on the energy industry. We are a part of that, the big global impact. And from there, coming to what we could do in and around us. Over to you.
Yep, thanks Raj for that introduction, and for everyone's benefit, I used to work for Raj and one of the most dynamic bosses I worked for. I think Raj, it was 2005 to 2010. Okay, so no, thanks for that introduction. What I'll try doing is I've put together a few pages on what exactly is the role of the industry when we think about air pollution. Let me try sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so so I am here representing a small NGO that we run out of a place near Mumbai called Thane. It's called Green Ecospace Foundation. We started this around 2 years back. It actually started as a local community initiative, a small WhatsApp group that. Can you hear me? Is the audio okay?
We are good. We are good.
Okay, so it started as a small community, a WhatsApp group, and then evolved into some like-minded individuals coming together and setting up a Section 8 charitable company. Our vision that we laid out was to inspire, create, and evolve sustainable communities. We decided we will work in 4 places or 4 crucial areas. One was maintaining green cover around us, reducing and managing waste, curbing pollution, and ensuring safety for people and vehicles on roads, and water conservation. Yeah. So we are all professionals.
Excuse me, people, can you, gentlemen and ladies, keep yourself on mute? Coordinator, can you mute everyone except the speaker, please?
Sure. So
Mute everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Raj.
Sorry.
So the organization is professionally run. Most of us or all of us who are members of the organization, a part of the founding board and the executive committee are professionals. We are apolitical, we are action oriented. And yeah, we do adhere to utmost transparency in anything that we do. With that, I'll go to the topic of the day. And I just laid out what I think is something that I can offer to this audience. One is air quality is largely linked to the emissions that we see around us. And I wanted to understand from where do emissions generate, and then also briefly discuss, we hear about two things a lot, right? We hear about global warming and we hear about air pollution, right? Now, are these two sides of the same coin? So we'll just discuss that a little bit. And then why is industry now changing and suddenly evolving and trying to have a more mature point of view? And then what changes are being driven and initiated by the industry. So I think the session is structured well. I'm part of the problem, and then you will hear the solutions from the doctors, the medical doctors who come in. So if I go to giving you a quick overview of emissions that we see around us globally by industry, right? So there is largely power. The power sector is the biggest source of energy as well as emissions for us. A lot of it is chart, and then oil and gas also contributes. So power contributes 27%, oil and gas contributes around 8% of the global emissions. There are the transport sectors, buildings, etc., which between both of them contribute approximately 20% emission. And then all the other industries around us that we see, right? They submit and they all create around 25% odd emissions there. Yeah. Being an oil and gas industry professional, I'll just zoom into oil and gas. And when we say 9% of greenhouse gas emissions, this is how the breakup is, right? So there is emissions are measured in the industry by organizations using three definitions, right? We measure what is called scope 1 emissions, which is direct emissions created from our own operations. So say, for example, I run a factory or a refining company runs a refinery, right? Or a upstream company explores for crude. So those emissions are called as scope 1 or direct emissions. Indirect emissions or scope 2 are the emissions that that are generated from the energy that we use for our own operations, right? So that is what is scope 2. And then there is scope 3, which is when my product gets consumed in the value chain, what emissions get created. Now, the bigger problem with the oil and gas industry is not the scope 1 and scope 2. It's actually the scope 3, right? And which is where 33% of the fuels generated lead to emissions when the fuel is consumed, right? As a source of energy. So that's roughly the breakup, 42%, and then 58% is non-oil and gas, right? Now, the topic for today is air quality, and why are we talking about emissions here, right? So air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions are actually two sides of the same coin. There's research been done where it's very clearly identified that greenhouse gas emissions are one of the key contributors for air pollution. And there's again research around millions of premature deaths that could be avoided due to air pollution. And when you try greenhouse gas emissions in efforts to slow climate change, you not only reduce air pollution, but you also solve for the bigger problem of global warming, right? Now, some of the pollutants that we see, such as the
coordinator, are you guys able to hear? I lost the line for a moment.
Same here, Piyush. Hello, Piyush. We also lost the line. Here again. I think Dr. Amit's,
Okay.
we are there, but his signal may be weak.
Yeah. Let's be on standby. Let's try.
Yeah, yeah.
I think COVID has made us experts, and Zoom. Zoom had a complete different meaning. Today, Zoom means meeting people. It's not magnification. It's not moving fast. Now I'm trying to fill up the gap, holding your patience and then engaging with you. It was a very interesting discussion. Amit started getting into the details, and he has been working with some of the global companies, the largest oil and gas companies, and wanted to share by the time Amit comes, he has created an organization where they have started measuring pollution and publishing it. And that's something, some amazing work. It's across the industry he is doing. And he is trying to, that organization is trying to make emissions also a part of the balance sheet kind of a thing. What's the impact on them?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know at what point of time I got disconnected. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Amit.
Did
you were
you
talking about the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and just after scope 3, we lost you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
You want to share the screen, Amit?
Okay, yeah. 1 second. I'll share the screen again. I think I had a blip with my internet service and got disconnected. Okay, so sorry about that. So like I said, scope 3 is where we go and the fuel that we produce that gets consumed leads to 33% of the emissions worldwide. Yeah. The other topic that I was going to cover today was around air quality, which is the primary topic for today, and the linkage for greenhouse gas emissions, right? So air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions are largely two sides of the same coin. Yeah. So whenever greenhouse gas emissions occur, we release a lot of fine particulate matter into the air, right? Which largely is a contributor to air pollution. The benefits of reducing greenhouse gas emissions will be seen evidently. The largest benefits will be seen in the most densely populated regions of the world, which is, of course, South Asia, China, and then parts of North America and Europe, which are densely populated. Yeah. Now, having discussed this, now the industry operated in a certain manner, right, for 100 plus years. Why is the industry now changing? The industry is largely changing not because of overall good intent, but I would love to say that that's what we are trying to do. There is a fair amount of investor activism that is happening, right, where the industry is now being forced to change because some of the largest investors representing like pension funds who represent $2.4 trillion worth of assets are saying that they will invest only in portfolios that are committed to net zero emissions. Yeah. Also, the cost of renewable and cleaner sources of energy, cleanable sources of energy is consistently dropping. So now, for example, a solar or a wind-based energy source is priced at approximately 2/3 of what it was priced at 2011. So the cost has reduced by 67%. Yeah. Also, there is greater implementation of carbon taxes, what is called carbon taxes on carbon emissions worldwide. So today, 20% of the entire world's carbon emissions are now being taxed. Yeah. So that is where the industry now sees that they don't have any other option but to change and move towards reducing emissions. So every organization that you will see will talk about 2 years that I have noticed in my industry, and I'm guessing in other industries too. One is 2030, and the second year we talk about is 2050. Everyone largely is coming up with an objective where they are saying that we will reduce our emissions by 50% by the year 2030, and we will reduce it 100%, or we will become net zero emissions by 2050. Now that again is many years worth of 3 decades from where we are today, but is hopefully we are headed in the right direction there in terms of tackling some of these challenges. Now, what are the changes being driven? And this is, I just wanted you to get a flavor of what is possible, right? So again, now, if you remember the chart, I talked about 9% scope 1 and scope 2, and I talked about a 33% scope 3. Now, this is what the industry is doing is 9%, what we own, right? We are trying to attack for that. So if you look at the industry, we are broken down into 3 segments. It's upstream, midstream, and downstream. So upstream is where we get the crude and natural gas out from Mother Earth. Midstream is where we transport it from the source to the refining stations, to compressing units where natural gas gets compressed and transported. Yeah. And what you will see is in each one of these sectors, now there are attempts being made by the oil and gas majors to look at bringing greater amount of emissions focus in each step of the operation, right? So, for example, there is a new technology called carbon capture, use and storage. It's called CCUS, which is being implemented upstream, where carbon gets captured at source where it gets generated, and then gets buried deep inside under the ground, where it gets stored for rather than escaping into the atmosphere. All of you would have visited refinery sites, and you would have seen something called flaring, which is the chimney-like structure on the top that constantly flares, right? That actually represents an inefficient operation, right? The more you flare, the more you are actually losing out on fuel that you are generating. So there are technologies that are trying to reduce flaring. There's something called fugitive emissions, right? Methane is, I think it's rated as 85 times more powerful in terms of the damage it can cause than CO2, right? Carbon dioxide. Now there are fugitive emissions of methane that happen, and those leaks are being identified and attacked. There's of course the crude transport that happens using large vessels or ships. There's refining, where again plants are trying to move to sources of refineries are trying to move to alternate sources from crude to vegetable oil. A lot of the energy industry itself is trying to become energy efficient and renewable energy focused. So they are trying to buy energy from solar providers, right? So in a way, buy energy from a solar or a windmill generated plant, so that at least the energy that we are consuming is not generated using that is not generated from sources that cause emissions. Yeah. So this is what we are largely seeing in our industry. There is also what I call a information technology element to this, right? Till now, there is measuring emissions itself is not a science per se, because the diversity of sources and operations where emissions happen is so diverse that there are no unified ways of measuring emissions, and there are no standard scales on how you define and what you define as an emission, how do you measure it. So there is a lot of heuristics that are being used to measure emissions. And what the industry is doing, and I represent one such company, it's called Pidex, is where we are now collaborating amongst ourselves between upstream and downstream players in the industry to identify how we should measure and track and report emissions. Yeah. So there are organizations. One such project is called the Carbon Disclosure Project. So all of us in the industry now disclose what are our scope 1, scope 2 emissions, that we are responsible for. We are now building IT infrastructure to capture the data about these emissions and then standardize it and report out and collaborate and share it with amongst ourselves, from suppliers to, so I am a supplier, say to an upstream company, I will share my emission data with an upstream company. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, which is, like I said, I look at myself as a part of the problem, right? And we are just trying to be a smaller problem than what we are. The intent is there. Everyone realizes that we can't continue the way we have worked in the past 100 years. Most of the companies now, if you go, suddenly everyone's become green in their logos. Yeah. So if you go to any oil and gas major, you will see Statoil becoming Equinor, BP's gone green, Shell's gone green, everyone's gone green. And they are trying to invest in renewable technologies. So I'll also send out the presentation to the organizer. Most of the sources that I have used, some of them are from McKinsey, some of them are from NIEHS, some of them are from the UN Environment Program, right? So yeah, that's what I had for the discussion today. Thank you.
Fantastic, Amit. I was exactly expecting that you will give us a perspective of the industry, and you have just done justice to that. I would like you to give a couple of takeaways from being in industry as an individual and the green movement, what you have started from a simple talks perspective. What is that as a evangelist and advocacy you would like the audience to take away?
So one thing is, please raise your voices, right, as consumers. A lot of us do not question things around us, yeah. So the more there is activism worldwide, the more the leaders have to notice, yeah. So we just take it for granted, oh, there's bad air quality around us and we don't do anything about it. I've seen a lot of families with senior citizens at home who suddenly have asthma issues, yeah, in the winters, and some of them go into ICUs, and we just accept it, right? We need to challenge and we need to question our authorities on why is there, what are we doing, what is the government doing to regulate the industry, right? Because some of this is going to translate into action. We already face the heat, yeah, as an industry. We look at ourselves as the tobacco industry of 1990s, yeah. So the challenge is for us to go out and for consumers to go out and question us much more, each one of us to question, including me. I'm ultimately a consumer too, right? And I also get equally impacted, yeah. Yeah, that's my key takeaway, Raj.
Thank you, Amit. It was wonderful. We will come back with some questions at the end of the session, Amit.
Sure. I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you. Next in the series is my good friend from UK, Dr. Shuja Shafi. He is a pathologist by training and qualification. He has spent many years in India and in the UK. He has been working in the field of public health services. He also has interest in epidemiology, and he is working with the Royal College of Pathologists. But one of the things how I got connected with Dr. Shuja is he works for an organization while he does his medical doctor and pathologist job. He has been spending a lot of time, and his passion is to work with mass gathering. And he told me a story when I met him in India. And he has been one of the evangelists who is trying to fight infectious diseases around the world. He is doing work with Africa and India. He actually was a partner to one of the associations we were working with to do investigations and checkup of TB for all the Hajj pilgrims. There was a Lancet publication which were in UK that majority of the people who visited Hajj, traveling in one plane, how many people they infected. So he's done a lot of work on this one. And we would like to hear the wisdom, the golden nuggets from Dr. Shuja Shafi. Dr. Shuja, if you can start trying to share the screen. And then we will hear from him what he brings to Simple Talks today.
Is that, can you hear, can you see this?
We can see you, but not your screen yet.
Oh. That's-
You got it, the green button, screen share
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, it's well. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. I'll share it again. Am I sharing the screen? Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Neelam, are you seeing the screen?
No, I'm not able to see the screen. Yeah, now it's come.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Shuja. Yeah, you made it.
Good, at last.
Yeah, I think doing medicine is far more easy than projecting this slide.
And,
Yes, now you're full screen also.
Right,
Thank you.
your full screen.
Thank you very much, Raj, for that introduction. I'm humbled by that, but just to give you a little background, I am a retired individual who's worked in the public health laboratory service and hospital consultant as a consultant laboratory in National Health Service. I retired over 11 years ago, but my passion actually just started just before my retirement for mass gatherings, Hajj, and we have now learned that there are a very large number of other mass gatherings which don't seem to feature very much publicly, and we've been in recent years concentrating on that, and the effect of that on public health issues is enormous. The opportunity to do something is also enormous, and we believe that now the question of air quality, pollution, and environmental things are also going to become very important when we consider mass gatherings. But that's a different story. But I could just very quickly just say that the poor air quality is the largest environmental risk to the public. A long-term exposure to this can cause chronic conditions. And we hear of things like cardiovascular disease, respiratory diseases, cancer, stroke, becoming increasingly common and increasing in numbers. And this is almost like any country you look into, you find that there's an increasing incidence of these conditions. You could almost say there's a pandemic of these conditions, which perhaps people don't necessarily appreciate because they don't have that impact. It's been a slow increase, but the increase certainly is. So it impacts the individual throughout his or her lifetime. And to make sure that people are protected, we all have a role, and that should be our sort of motto. Governments have a role, health services and healthcare practitioners have a role, the local governments have a role, and actually then it's also for the individuals to play their part. So here it is. Air pollution affects us all, as I said, human health, animals, plants, and the atmosphere as a whole. And we interact with each other. So anything that is either ignored will have eventually an effect on one of this chain, if you like. And therefore now, more recently, there's been an interest, and the World Health Organization have developed the idea of One Health, so that, these things interact. And at the end of the day, human health, if that's all you're interested in, you cannot ignore the things around. So that has got to be our message. And this is a complicated slide, but it just shows you, and it's meant to be complicated because it is to show you the various factors that affect us and how we interact with each other. And these factors have a tremendous bearing on our health. So I won't go into details, but there you are, the non-communicable. We think about communicable disease as we will come to see. Non-communicable diseases have an issue with this, antimicrobial resistance, many other conditions, and we have just the veterinary sciences, the human sciences, and cultural practice. All these have an effect on how healthy or otherwise we are. There you are some of the serious effects of air pollution on the environment. I know the school is looking at a School of Simple Living has identified and classified in various categories, and air pollution is one of them. And what effect does it have? So these are some of the general effects that have been recognized: global warming, climate change, acid rain, smog, deterioration in the fields, extinction of animals, respiratory health problems, and indeed other problems, and the deterioration of buildings and building materials, and how they can have an effect on individuals' life. So, almost everything that you think of, there is an element of environmental consideration, and air pollution plays an important part in that. Now, where does it happen? As I said, it's almost like a pandemic, even of air pollution. And these are some of the countries, top 10 countries. It's everywhere, but these have been recognized as top 10 countries where there is the problem of pollution is high, and number of people who lose their lives is again shown. According to that, these are the countries and which seem to have huge, big problems, greater than others. Here again, the various ways in which air pollution contributes, whether it is industries, and we have heard an excellent presentation there. The road on which we go, the transport, the mode of transport, emission of that, agriculture, how we use our land properly, and even animal. Animals can be a source of methane and gas emissions, and how best to make sure that these are reduced are all part of the challenges that we have to face. Even the way where we live, and the residential accommodations, small and large commercial organizations, all these have a bearing on it. So life is complex, this is complex, and we have to be, this is where I think we all have a part to play. Now, air pollution could be either outside, external, or in the house. And within the house, these are the sort of sources through which emissions of pollution can take place. And this is been quite a significant contribution to the pollution and to the health of individuals. And thankfully, we are changing gradually, but as long as this fossil energy is used, this will be, the fuels are used, this will be the problem. And that we're changing, but we need to change faster, and we need to change in more places than we are at the moment. And it's not just a small little time, but it's throughout one's life we have, and these are a list of affecting the areas that affect it. And you just wonder, how huge is this contribution, or air pollution contributes to our health, or ill health, should I say. And you would notice that all these conditions that have been recognized, that have been listed out there, are things that we are increasingly becoming aware of, and we're told that there's a rise, these are on the rise. So I just want to share with you a story so that it's a learning curve, learning story, which is very important. And I thought this is a very timely decision that we have had recently. And I think I'd like to share it. The story is air pollution can kill. That's the moral of this. This is a story of a bright, vibrant 9-year-old girl from Southeast London. And she developed asthma. Her asthma worsened over the years and required frequent hospital admissions, seizures she'd gone into, and then frequent ventilation. And over a period of 3 years, she had something like 30 plus admissions to hospital requiring, as I said, intensive care, ventilation, etc. Unfortunately, in 2013, she died. So that's the girl who you can see, bright, vibrant, with a lot of future, but she lost her life. The mother, a very determined lady, wanted to find out what is it that killed her daughter. And she received different stories, different explanations, but she wouldn't give in. The inquest, which is into the cause of her death, Ella is her name, Ella's death, stated something like, something in the air might have contributed to her death. And that troubled Ella's mother, and she persevered. And a series of investigations, advice from experts, research, etc., helped her to make a case for a second inquest. The second inquest had now, only 2 days ago, determined that on balance of probabilities, air pollution was a major causal factor in the death of this child. Now this, we believe, is a landmark decision which has put on the map the cause of death as air pollution. And therefore, if we want to prevent things, we want to do something about it, this is a very strong, it may be just something that we all know about or we hear about, but there it is. In legal terms, the cause of her death has been introduced as related to air pollution. And the more these are recognized and put on death certificates, the more people will become aware. It's one of the many things that can be done, and that is to determine whether this has, what role air pollution has contributed in an individual's death. Now, it's very difficult to prove, but the process has started, if you like. This is the road, not very far from where Ella and her mother lived, and you can understand the emissions and thing. Now, this is nothing just about specific to London or Southeast London. I think you would certainly recognize things like this in wherever we live. So it is again a universal problem. And here it is that it was seen such a remarkable and groundbreaking decision that there was a press conference there up there with the advisors and the councils, experts, and so that's where we are. So I think that's very timely for us in the sense that it has made us concentrate our minds on this more than we have had in the past. And it's a killer. It's a killer in that something like 7 million now people seem to die each year in air pollution related conditions. And the contribution is both in the household as well as in ambient air. Household, as I said, the various possibilities, but it it contributes significantly. So we can't just talk about pollution in the air outside, but also we've got to look at and the household inside as well. And just as a comparison, the number of deaths estimated by various other well-known conditions is much smaller than air pollution as has been recorded. So if it's not aggressively controlled, projected ambient air pollution alone would cause up to 9 million deaths per year. That's the projection. So something's got to be done. Here again, an example of non-communicable diseases accounts, air pollution deaths compared with other conditions that we've talked about. Look at the neurodevelopmental disorders and the neurodegenerative diseases. Public Health England have issued in 2018 a report, going the wrong way, a report where the estimated long-term exposure of man-made air pollution in the UK has been, as the annual effect, what it has been, it would be equivalent to 28,000 to 36,000 deaths. And if in the following few years, if there is some reduction in the fine particulate air pollution, which is one of the causes of these conditions, it could prevent around 50,000 coronary heart disease cases, 16,500 stroke cases, and cases of asthma, 9,000, and lung cancer, 4,200. So here is actually a projection of what the estimate is, and what if some action is taken, then what could be prevented. How does this actually happen? The short-term effects are, or how do they present? The short-term effects are exacerbation of asthma. Asthma otherwise is yes, a trouble condition, but not that leads to death. But exacerbations of it under other attenuating circumstances could do that, as we have seen in the case of Ella. This started off by cough, sneezing, wheezing, and shortness of breath. These episodes of high air pollution increase the respiratory and cardiovascular hospital admissions and morbidity. The long-term effects we've seen, and this generally has a significant effect on the life expectancy. So what are the things that we need to do? The housing risks, we've got to make sure that these factors, these challenges are catered for and looked at. You may have heard, and I'm sure there's stories everywhere. I'm just giving you examples of what we've had recently, and in England. In London, for example, there's a huge, big, large tower block of flats which caught fire. It was, and many lives were lost right in center of London. Now, the cause for that was fire due to the materials that was used in claddings, as claddings. So here we have, again, things where we can have the impact and what we can do to prevent. This is again, whether you're old, young, pregnant, poorer communities, you're all affected, but the poorer you are, or the health inequalities are actually more widened or more exaggerated in people who live in poor conditions, and that exacerbates even more some of the challenges that they have. Where you live is also makes a difference, as we have seen. So what can we do? We've said about governments, we've said, yes, very important role, but I think we have got to also, as healthcare practitioners, we've got to make sure that we not only take account of this when we are seeing our patients, but also educate our communities and our patients, because most of the things that they see we have to see what has been the impact of this, or how has air pollution impacted on their conditions, on their health. So my final takeaway message is that yes, this is the largest environmental threat to health, air pollution. It kills people. 92% of deaths occur in low and middle income countries. So there's a challenge for us. 9 million premature deaths, 16% of all deaths worldwide, very significant number. And it costs money, it costs lives, and therefore you cannot do enough. And this is what we all have to be careful about. Thank you.
Excellent, Dr. Shuja. And your timing was immaculate. My buzzer was just about to go. What a thing. It's worth noting, Dr. Shuja, you used the word called pandemic, and the numbers you showed, the number of deaths, COVID, if it was a pandemic and the number of deaths, and the whole world is, debate number of deaths which are happening because of pollution is no smaller than COVID. I think it's been a silent killer.
Yeah.
And another very interesting point from one of your slides was you had about 6 point some million people or something like that who are dying out of pollution, and 2.8, that's about 40% of it is domestic.
Yeah.
I think that's the key takeaway. We ourselves have got something in our hand. 40% of it is our own doing, which we could change it. Yeah, very interesting. And the Ella story and the verdict, that is a landmark verdict. And that's going to change that pollution area. Now it is legal and we can make accountable somebody for the deaths and the morbidities and the suffering of the people because of pollution. Thank you, Dr. Shuja. Now we will come to the question answer section a little later. Let me introduce your third speaker, Dr. Vijay Shekhar Janapareddy. He is a pediatrician practicing in Hyderabad. He is known for his preventive care, timely detection and preventive care. He works with IAP and National Neonatal Firm and many of the health, especially with the children's health. He has been acclaimed for his, he has been acknowledged for his work in the sphere of pediatrics. So over to you, Dr. Vijay. Would like to learn what's the impact of air and what happens on health.
Thank you, Raj. And two eminent speakers have talked before me, and Dr. Shuja and Amit have clearly, elucidated what happens from an industry point of view, and the other one from the doctor's point of view. What's my role here? Now, I was thinking about, number one, this is the age of Trump. People are skeptics. They don't believe anything. Everything is doubted. So there will be people who will say air pollution is a myth. It doesn't kill. So do we have proof? WHO, as Dr. Shuja said, has estimated the deaths, and the methods of estimating these deaths have become very, very specific. Despite that, Dr. Shuja admitted that some places we don't have a direct link to say that, yes, this was the cause and this is the effect. So skepticism will be there. Now, our role, my role, especially today, is to say, do we have proof? If so, did this COVID pandemic help us get that proof? I look at it in two ways. The effect of air pollution on health has been talked about more vigorously in the last decade and a half. Every November, December, and Jan, we have a huge uproar about what happens in and around Delhi. Now the farmers are blamed for burning their crop. The industries are blamed for causing pollution. Our building material friends are blamed for the dust. And all of us are blamed for running our motor vehicles. In the last couple of years, we have seen some innovative things like on, off, odd, even, stop the construction for so long. I feel they have been quick fixes rather than any concerted effort towards mitigating the problem. Now, PUSA has come up with something without burning the stubble. You can digest it with a biodigester and use it in the farm itself. That makes sense. That goes in the right direction. But has the same thing happened in the building industry? Has the same thing happened in the oil and gas and other industries? Dr. Architect Neelam will, of course, enlighten us on the building material part. And what I gathered from Amit is there is a intention to do something about it. But the intention right now is concentrate on the 9% rather than the bigger one. So probably there is a lot of movement to be achieved before we can get somewhere on this. Now, the moment the pandemic struck, these are pictures pre-pandemic and in March, April. The skies were clean. It looked green. They saw dolphins in Venice. Everything seemed to be turning back a couple of decades. So what did it tell me as a layman? It said, oh, so a part of it could be reversible. So why should we not reverse it? Then by October, November, all of us got tired of the lockdowns. The picture became evident that yes, we cannot survive with a total economic shutdown. And the industry opened again so that we could earn and live our lives. Now, living our lives look like this picture. This is what our living means. Why are we here? How did we reach here? The major problems any pediatrician will point out is our numbers. If we are going to grow our population in this way, there is no way out. You have to feed them. You have to give them a way to earn their livelihood. And when the numbers are so huge, the production has to be good. Heavy production causes these things. And if it has to be made cheaper for the lower section of society economically, to make it available, you cut corners. And when you cut corners, you have huge pollution. Now, the impact of the particulate matter, the PM 2.5 that is seen everywhere on TVs when we talk about the weather, viruses reproduce and spread faster when the PM 2.5 increases. Our body stops responding efficiently to viruses, and our white blood cells and viral clearing slows down dramatically. Now, this is proven research. The next part is, as we came to the COVID, everybody knows about the enzyme ACE2 and the receptor that is there in the lungs, because this is the major receptor that the COVID-19 uses to enter our lung. But there's been studies on this for quite some time now, from the SARS epidemic prior to the COVID-19 epidemic. And what did they find? Smoking and pollution dramatically change the way our ACE2 receptors in the lung behave, And this increases our chance of these viral infections. And this is, I am talking about specific evidence from a disease perspective, so as to convert our skeptics into believers. We have listed other two proteins, DC sign and L sign. These are mainly in the immune response part. Now, this is a study. The first one was published in Cardiovascular Research. The second one from the Harvard School of Medical Health, Public Health, and the third one is a Dutch study. Unequivocally, 27% more deaths in East Asia, 19% in the US, 15% more deaths worldwide, just because of the long-term effects of air pollution. And the PM1 2.5, this is an interesting part. A 1 microgram increases the risk of severe disease from COVID by 8%. This may not look huge, but let me put it in perspective. Now, 10 micrograms is considered to be a safe level. Let's presume that today morning, early morning, let's say 3 a.m., we were at 1. And just during the traffic hours, morning, let's say 9 to 11, and evening 5 to 8, it increases to 10. How much has the increase been? Tenfold. And there you have a more than 900% increase in the chance of severe disease, even though technically you are below the 10 microgram per cubic meter level of pollution, just because it has increased that much for a couple of hours every day. So to say that we are living in an area which is less polluted, but if we are using fuels, if you are increasing the pollutant levels, even periodically every day, it does have a serious effect. There was a 20% increase in PM 2.5, and it led to a more than 100% increase in COVID infections. Now here we have dealt with three things. One, the long-term exposure. One, the increased chance of getting a severe disease. And three, the increased chance of getting a disease itself. All three were proven beyond any doubt. And these studies are recent, 2019 and 2020. Now, is there a way to reverse it? Yes, there is a way. How do we go about it? Number one, can we put a check on population? That's something that the government seems to be working very seriously on, but probably we have lost steam over time. Probably more needs to be done on that front. Who are the people where population is rising rapidly? The poorer sector. Where is the pollution more? The poorer economies. Where are the deaths more? The poorer economies. Why are they becoming poorer? You are exposed to pollution, you are exposed to poverty, you are more chances of being born premature, more chances of ill health, more chances of having a stunted growth, stunted academics, poor earning, and then the cycle goes on. Something needs to be done, and it needs to be done on a war footing, basically because no problem is local. After COVID, all of us know, no problem is local. The problem starts here, the effects are far-ranging and wide-ranging. Everybody gets affected. So there's a need for a concerted effort to get on to this pollution business. Now, there's one more interesting thing. What did COVID do to pollution? Okay, we know pollution increased COVID, the severity and the chances of getting it. Did COVID also increase pollution? The amount of grey water now that is generated, both domestic and commercial, has gone up probably 10 to 20 fold. I know for myself that in the hospital that I work in, we are spending 30% more on chemicals, sodium hypochlorite, some sprays, soaps in water every month, month on month. And then we also have the need to wash our hands frequently. So the amount of water, the amount of soap, the amount of chemicals getting used has become dramatically more. Also, what has increased, unfortunately, is the single-use plastic. That has gone up because everything has to be sterile. Our masks have to come in a sterile pack. Our gowns have to come in a sterile pack, and they have to be just thrown back. There's a huge increase in the biomedical waste. Now, once this goes to incineration or dumping, the problem has to only increase. If it's incinerated, more air pollution. If it is put into the soil, it takes time to get digested. Then we have so many masks. Everybody has to wear a mask. Now, what masks they are using? How are they disposing? Also, what we have seen during the COVID pandemic was a dramatic increase in the pollution in the indoor air. The air quality indoor has become very, very poor. One, probably smoking, probably too many people staying at home, and the consequence of that. Now, what do we do? Can we protect ourselves against air pollution? Can we protect ourselves against COVID? A cloth mask, a properly stitched one, properly worn one, can give you about 30% protection. The surgical masks offer around 70 to 80%, but the N95 and N99 masks are really safe, reusable. In a non-medical setup, it can nearly be used for a month, but you cannot wash it. In a medical setup, of course, the use has to be limited. Now, what is the way forward? One, the social distance, the mandatory mask, the safe hands, this is for COVID, the testing and vaccine for COVID. But what is the way forward for our air pollution? Number one, decrease our population. It's in our hands. Number two, decrease the consumerism that has taken over our society. Everybody wants a new phone every 3 months, 6 months. Everybody wants something new. Okay, can we cut it down? The answer definitely looks a yes. Our parents used a TV for well over 25, 30 years. A radio for well over 50 years. And that's a fact. And conservative people in our generation have probably used it for probably 5 to 10 years. The present generation, my kids, I don't think will use it more than 2 to 3 years. So here's where, one, we come in and change the attitude. Two, I would like Amit or the industry part to respond and make things which are not to be thrown away in so many months. Because especially from the phones I have understood, they don't want me to use it beyond 3 years. They make it unusable after 3 years. They make a TV unusable after so many years. They make a car unusable after so many years. So I can understand the industry wanting to sell more. So if you make a Prestige pressure cooker, after a while everybody has it, you can't sell it anymore. You make a Sumit machine and the company goes bankrupt and broke and closes down because its machines, Sumit machines never go bad. While I understand that, is there a way, is there a mid path where we can decrease the amount of waste that we are generating, that we have things which can be used for a longer period, efficiently, effectively? Can the industry make a mechanism whereby we will be using things for a longer time, not destroying things faster? So one, my role as a pediatrician, look at population control, look at safe health measures, instill in people the idea about simple living not as a slogan, simple living in every facet of our life, whether we eat, drink, wear, have a social gathering, whatever, can it be simple? Can it be made only up to the essentials, not splurge? Then the industry has to look at whether it can make it possible for people to live like that. Now the industry is making it impossible for people to live a simple life. So this is where we are at, and I'll take questions after this. I'll stop my screen now.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay, Director of the Medical Director of Bloom Hospitals. That was interesting and something. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So to the audience, something very interesting which Dr. Vijay brought to the table was, what is the effect of pollution? I think many people talk about it. What is the effect of COVID on pollution was an interesting twist in the story. That how can COVID increase the pollution? That was a complete contrarian way of looking at things. And thanks, Vijay, for putting that perspective that we have COVID has increased the pollution by the amount of masks we are generating, the gray kind of a water and the chemical usage at every domestic hole. I think that is that's a good one. I think that's one key takeaway. That COVID, Neelam, I think that
I would like to put in one more point.
Yeah.
The first 6 months of the lockdown, by locking down, we would have saved around nearly 3.5 million lives by decreasing the pollution. And COVID probably even after it runs its course in 2 years. So that is how badly we are hurting ourselves.
That's scary. Second part, what was a common thread was across Dr. Shuja and you we are always, when we talk about pollution, think about pollution, what comes to our mind is an automobile or an industry or the flaring of the chimney or things like that. We wouldn't have even realized that 2.8 million people are dying of domestic, pollution. And what you made is COVID, the amount of bacterial or the microorganism load in the house, because never the people density of the house. People go to work, even a nuclear family in India, the father, the mother and child, they were never 24/7 in the house. So the amount of microbial load and the exhalation load in each room has become more. So there are some very interesting questions coming out from the audience. Air purifier. So would you like to take this question of how does air purifier in home help fight air pollution? Is this the new way? Everyone should have against consumerism. We add one more gadget in our house now, air purifier.
Till we are able to get a handle on the pollution itself, it might be worth it to use an air purifier. And how it works is sucks in the air, has filters, you decrease the air pollution inside. Now, is it an effective way? Yes, it is. But is it a long-term solution? It cannot. You are just attacking the air after it has got polluted. The idea would be to decrease it. Yes, we have to save ourselves for the time being. We have to use it. But then we have to look at longer-term solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. Amit, there is a question from the audience, Mr. Prakash. Do we need to monitor indoor air quality in homes and offices? What is the safe distance from sewage plus effluent treatment plants, which are coming up in large numbers?
So again, the sewage question, I do not have enough expertise on to comment. But the indoor air quality is, from whatever I have read and researched, is deemed to be equally challenging and needs to be monitored. is what I understand, but I'll definitely let Dr. Janappa Reddy and Dr. Shafi comment further. So I do understand that indoor air quality is a concern and needs to be monitored for.
Dr. Shuja, would you like to expand a bit on the sewage effluent treatment plants and the question?
Yeah, I think, thank you. Yes, it plays a very significant role. My experience or my knowledge of it is more related to antimicrobial resistance and pharmaceutical industry effluents. And that there are examples of that causing big problems there. So yes, it is a problem. We've got to solve that. We've got to address that. I just wanted to talk about the internal, household air quality. I think we've got to relate things. We've got to take a more broader outlook. Yes, you can purify the air you live in the household. Yes, but I think we also need to find other alternative, innovative ways. In countries where there's hot countries, what about ventilation, improving the ventilation? Because here we are, for example, we're trying to encourage people, particularly in relation to COVID, to do things in open air. We are not allowed to meet in the house, but we can, depending on which type of lockdown situation we have, we are allowed to meet outside the house. So I think ventilation, improving the ventilation would be ways of doing that in the household, and the architectural and planning of those would be they're long term, but I think those are the other alternative, innovative ways of thinking that we should put. It's not a short or immediate term solution, but that's what we should be looking at in the long term.
Thank you, Dr. Shuja. Dr. Vijay and Dr. Shuja, there is a question here.
Raj, may I request? I'm not able to see the visual of the speakers actually. Yeah, now I think Dr. Sethi has come. Shuja also, he was not visible.
Yeah, all of them are
while he was speaking. So.
Take
maybe.
Take a tile view. You can see all the speakers.
Okay.
So, thank you. I hope you are able to see now. So, Dr. Vijay and Dr. Shuja, there's a question. Is asthma hereditary? Not relevant with this topic, but I think the question has come, you may want to look at. How can it be controlled? So I would like you to answer this question, address the, question, but also talk about the impact of pollution on asthma. That will help the audience.
I think Dr. Vijay is the right person to answer that question.
Yeah. Is asthma hereditary? A part of it is. What we would call in medical parlance would be a multifactorial causation. It's not purely genetic. It has got other factors coming in. Now, what does air pollution do to asthma? It definitely exacerbates it. It makes it easier for people to suffer from asthma as the pollution levels go up. Pollution, along with viral infections, worsen it even further because they are the triggers. Now, can we prevent asthma? Yes, we can. One, healthy living. What would that be? We can cut down on what we can. Household smoke, whether it's smoking, whether it is agarbattis and whatever things that we have. Do we really need home fresheners, something that gives a nice fragrance? Do we need it? Do we need all out? Do we need mats, coils, those papers to be burned to keep the mosquitoes out? Or can we have a slightly cumbersome thing like a mosquito net or a net for the doors and all? So these are the lifestyle changes that we have to influence people to take up on, rather than go for a chemical means and a quick fix which does it fast. Now, regarding if a family is living a healthy life, adequate exercise, right food, good air, good exercise, even though you're an asthmatic, even though you have the tendency, you may go through your life without manifesting it. That's the truth of asthma. There are people who think, no, I'll brazen it through. I'll go through all this. It hasn't done anything to, well, Trumpism at its best. What else can you say? Thank you.
Okay, so these days there isn't a meeting without Trump. So we got the word Trump. So it had to be just like a Hindi spicy masala. Okay, I don't see much questions from the audience. So let me, as a moderator, ask to Dr. Shuja, what is that one thing you would like every citizen to do?
I think the one thing I would like to do is to see is we concentrate on the children, the youngsters, educate them, make it compulsory for them to learn about this. I was delighted to see the School of Simple Living. I think, that should be a topic for almost like a subject, life subject for every school. Every child should go through that, because when we say we all have a part to play, we cannot actually ignore the future of our children and the future generations to be taught about this. So I would really play put a very big importance to this. I think we should have schools with lessons, particularly on the subject. I remember, thanks to my school, I can plug that in, St. George's Grammar School in Hyderabad, where we had a lesson, a topic called civics, where teachers taught us about what our duties as citizens are. And I remember my principal, who just showed us a thing of how not to throw paper around. And right in the interval sessions, he used to go around the school while people were playing and just pick up a paper and put in his pocket. He, by example, made us feel this is what the norm is and we should be doing it. And that, I think, is a way of making sure that the younger generation, the future generation, for whom we have to dedicate our lives now, are actually taught properly about these. And we need to find innovative ways of making sure that they get interested in this. You would have heard about Greta Thunberg, the one who made news, and that was very impactful. She has certainly inspired not just the youngsters, but even the elderly like us. And I think that is, again, showing the power of what, when somebody is inspired and educated about it, they can make a difference.
Excellent, Dr. Shuja. And Neelam, what a way. I mean, your topic is simple talks, then small talks. Dr. Shuja has simplified a doctor of his caliber, trying to demystify and coming to connecting with the people, telling us what can be done. Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Shuja. You have demystified, made it simple even for school children what to do with this one. I'll move forward and want to ask Amit. I want a total opposite view. What is that one thing you don't want people to do? What is that one thing you would like every citizen not to do?
Yeah, I think Dr. Vijay touched upon it. Part of it, my answer would have been consumerism, and over consumerism is something that I see as the bane of our society, right? That lust for the next device, the next no, so if you see, there is this website which is now running, renew your wardrobe sale. There is no reason for anyone to renew their wardrobe, right? I think there is a brand in Europe, it's called Patagonia. They say buy less, demand more. So their clothes are built such that they will last for years together. And they say, as a consumer, you buy less, but you demand more from us, right? And I think it's not a small company. They sell around $700-800 million worth of clothes every year. So that's the mindset that needs to come in amongst consumers, which is buy less and demand more. So I think that would fundamentally drive change in behavior.
Thank you, Amit. Patagonia. Yeah, I think the way you illustrate change, Once you give some, theory, you back it up with then an example. These are the examples and stories which stick in the mind. And I'm sure the audience will go and Google Patagonia and check that. Okay, Vijay, what would you like? What has COVID done? Again, without COVID, no meeting goes, complete. So we have covered Trump. Now we will cover COVID. What did COVID teach us? What are the positive lessons COVID has taught us, which can impact the air pollution and these activities with COVID, which has given a good practice session for the 6, 7, 8 months?
One wonderful thing that has happened, unintended, but did happen after COVID was any hospital, especially if it dealt with kids, if it dealt with infectious diseases, were running at 10 to 20% of their capacity only. This is a fact over India, and I have seen it in Hyderabad with my own eyes. People have not fallen sick in the pandemic. Why did this happen? Number one, they were not going out. Number two, they're not eating out. I don't want to hurt the industry which makes food or eats out, but it has made a difference. So it has to look at its role in a different way. People have stopped gathering. Now, a marriage where adults probably are needed, are the kids needed? Do you have to make it such a big gathering? In a birthday party, are you needed as an adult? Can't 10 friends sit together like our good old days? Mom has made some khichdi and kheer, and can that not be a party? Now, this is what has happened in COVID. We have gone back to our old ways of living. Mom cooks, everybody eats, daddy cooks, everybody learns to cook. All this has happened. And it has made a dramatic difference in the health of children and adults. What has gone wrong because of COVID? One, the infection itself. Let's leave it alone. What has happened because of this social impact of it? What has happened is people have become depressed. People are having anxiety issues, and people who are on the borders are getting pushed into mental illnesses. So what did I realize? School is important. Playground is important. That COVID cut it off was a bad thing. We need to find a way to make it happen, COVID or not COVID. What shouldn't have happened was every outing is to a mall to buy things, to a restaurant to have food. Now that was something, when it got cut down, improved our health. So if we learn something out of it and make a change, a little change also, probably the illness load on India would come down by 40 to 60% easily if we make some changes. That is the take-home message from a pediatrician whose work has suffered, whose economics of the hospital have suffered, but it was worth suffering. It was worth it, because to see the smile on a parent's face, my child has not fallen sick for the last 6 months. He's gained weight, doctor, and he's gained height. Wonderful to hear, worth it. That's the message that COVID has given us.
Without medicines, without treatment, still people are healthy.
Can I come on it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, sure.
I think that's a very, very important point that Dr. Vijay has made. I was trying to come and mention that, but he's done it all very well. There's just this question about man is a social animal. And I think we have to have sort of a balance of proportion for these things. And that's what Dr. Vijay has described excellently. I have a problem with the term social distancing because, we are all social people. We are now socializing by remote, virtually, but we are socializing. And it's important for us to socialize because without that, the effect on people's mental illness and mental state, as Dr. Vijay said, is enormous. It is one of the one of the side effects of that, and I think, of COVID and lockdown, which perhaps people did not realize. And so I think it's very important. And the use of the term social distancing to me means that we are actually somehow suppressing that. And perhaps we should call it physical distancing, which is what really we are after, but improve and encourage socializing through means not necessarily large gatherings or getting together physically. So that's one thing. And I think we do need to reflect on other positive, in quotes, effects COVID has brought. It's made us think, it's made us change our style. And as has been said by Dr. Vijay, we should really look at, say, why don't we go back to the things that we used to do in the past and gain the maximum benefit of it. It's made us sort of reflect on this, or we should be reflecting on this. So I think, yes, number of lessons to be learned. Perhaps we should use COVID as a control before. What are the things that were going wrong during COVID? Which aspects improved, and make sure that we implement that post-COVID, which I hope is going to come soon.
One word I would like to say. I'm a pediatrician. Our national conferences would attract around 8 to 10,000 people over a week. A big extravaganza where you'll have parties, food, all kinds of stuff. Of course, academics would be a part of it. The best thing that has happened to our academics was we have eminent speakers from all over the world without spending a cent, without spending a dollar. They are teaching us probably better than they were teaching us in that conference, because the seats would be limited in each hall.
Yeah.
And you're not spending anything, you're not splurging anywhere, you're not taking up space, you're not using your transport, you're at home and benefiting from it. So a virtual conference, I think they should just simply ban those physical conferences. The amount of money that used to go into it, the amount of wastage of time, energy, and everything that went into it. I think that is one change our entire medical faculties. I don't know how it happens in the engineering and architect side. Should we really have a physical in-person conference? I really feel this is a much better way of having a conference rather than that.
And Dr. Vijay Shuja very well said, yeah, conference is this one. I have been, indulging with conferences, parties, and have been a party animal myself. The conference to ek bahana hai. The rest of the thing is, chai to ek bahana hai. But there is a charcha, what happens around it. So there is this meeting and greeting and that physical connect till the time technology really gives that virtual reality, augmented reality. The bhasha is there, but the bhavana is missing. The conference what Dr. Shuja, you and Dr. Amit have given me, had we been in front of each other, today our impact would have been at least about 30% more, having accomplished speakers. Right? The physical presence, I see that there is a gap. But, having said that, I really appreciate that what has pushed all the researchers and technologists, and I myself being in the technology space, if demonetization would not have happened from Modi, digital currency wouldn't have reached this particular stage. If COVID wouldn't have come, this virtual kind of a thing would have taken another 30 years. And thanks to the doctors community, you and the governments, the US, Europe, and everyone, they did not allow us to use technology to do medical telemedicine. They said that nonsense. You guys are why do you want to do teleconsultation? Doctor cannot see a patient. Now this need has made it legal that teleconsultation and telemonitoring, all these things is happening. The good part is we have access to the best doctors in the world, best faculty in the world at a button. Is it bridging the gap? It is not as much as it should be, but it is reaching there. But I can tell you that the amount of development which has happened in 2020 is equal to the development what happened in 20 years of World War. The kind of revolution what is happening is one, and we will accelerate at a great pace. Today we are more productive. Today India is embracing that only 30% of the people will go to work. Essential. Rest of the thing, hands and feet can be done. Just, Neelam, just imagine the amount of fuel saving. We should, I mean, yeah, the oil industry and everyone has to sell, but let's sell where we are. The market is not going to diminish. The marketing and the smart MBAs, or all of us where we have studied from B school, we will figure out a way whom to sell. You know, if we are selling 10 million liters of water today, we will continue to sell the 10 million liters and increase every year. But we will sell water instead of drinking, to sell them for taking shower, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's going to change. But a few takeaways is this virtualism has helped us, and the convenience that has helped us, the access to people. The world actually, in a true sense, got flatter only now. We used to hear the term flatter, but in a sense, true sense, it's become flatter. It's getting towards that particular side. Fantastic. I don't see many questions now. Neelam, I hope this particular talks has served
No,
the
yeah,
appetite of you, your school,
yeah,
and your
that was
career.
one point I wanted to make. The conferences that I've been doing, or webinar that I have been doing on the major issues like energy. Now today we have talked about air pollution, has been drawing at least 80% less audience than other, where you are building, and you have other kind of conferences where it goes up to almost 400 people. Sometimes it has gone. I mean, last week also we had one and it was almost 250 people. But in this kind of a scenario, when we have COVID and we are talking about health issues, people really are not interested. So I have a few questions, and I think if the speakers don't mind, a quick to Dr. Amit. Dr. Amit, building is most polluting, especially the emissions that we are talking, and it can go from, I think, and that also takes to energy in production of the material, construction, and then afterwards the usage of it, which is the recurring energy requirement of a building. And that is something which is almost like 40 to 60% in some countries, especially like UAE, where you have most of the buildings which are air conditioned. Your water is purified by also through use of energy and things like that. It can go as high as that. And I was expecting some people, at least from the building industry today, to come and understand this emission problem and the air pollution, because building industry does cause a lot of pollution actually in different kind of ways. But it's so unfortunate today. What is your take on the energy emissions, gas house emissions, especially from the building sector?
Absolutely correct. In fact, the buildings industry is one of the few industries. Everyone else got classified as others on the PowerPoint slide that I showed, besides oil and gas and power. But building industry was large enough to get called out specifically. So 5% of all global emissions are attributed to the buildings industry, and the lack of I guess you are a better expert on what can be done to reduce emissions, but the lack of focus on building sustainable building practices, I assume, is one of the core reasons. All of us, especially we get flummoxed when we go abroad and we see air conditioners on 24 hours. Whether you're using the not, you see lights on 24 hours. So yes, I think the building industry also needs to get its act together in terms of how they look at their contributions to this problem that we all are facing here.
Mm-hmm. And there was this another question. I think Dr. Vijay Shekhar spoke about the indoor air quality, which actually it has been a major cause of lot of pollution. Even Dr. Suja also had shown a slide where indoor pollution also kills so many people. The ventilation part in a building is generally left to the air conditioners these days, and people think it's a fashion to have those glass kind of buildings all over the place. So you make a box and you air condition it and you think you are fine. Now when in India especially, if the power goes, and it goes very frequently, and you have no ventilation inside, but people have become so used to that kind of a thing. It's also a prestige thing to have air conditioners in the house, and things like that. Like for example, in Bangalore we don't need air conditioning. The city is told to be air conditioned by itself, but we have most of the IT industries having their offices and all with double skin glass and things like that. So this is a lot of emissions which is happening from here, from this industry, and from inside. Unless until we open the windows, as I think Vijaya was telling, the operable windows which could actually be open and closed would be the best form of ventilation that we can have in the house. And I'll tell you, yesterday I was having a meeting with Fenesta people, who are the front runner in fenestration design, these windows and doors. And when I was talking to them, they had absolutely no idea as to how does the cold air come in or fresh air come in, and how does the polluted and the hot air actually escapes out. According to them, it can be done if you have just top to bottom one door, and it can be open, so air can come in and go at the same time. So when you have industry professionals who are selling and trying to make products for the building industry, or for this kind of a thing, and they do not have any idea, how do we actually go about educating people? And that is where the simple talks actually comes into the picture, because we are trying to make people aware what are the very simple questions that you can ask. I think Dr. Amit Sethi told you have to ask questions. So we are just trying to nudge people as to think more and think what you're supposed to ask the professionals, as in when you're getting something built, or you're going around and you go to a big mall, and thanks to COVID, the air conditioning is closed. What do you do there? You have people around there, and nobody is bothered actually whether the air conditioning system, or if it is not on air conditioning, there at least the exhaust system has to be on, so that the polluted air goes out. And air conditioned atmospheres are the most polluted environment. It has been public knowledge for a very long time, but it has been advocated by the builders, by developers, and by all star architects who use all very refined materials, the so-called very those kind of materials, and that becomes a big problem. So this is something which is I wanted to build a bridge between the medical profession and the kind of profession, because the space making, architects do space making, and which are supposed to be healthy, but that the healthy thing is somehow taken a back seat. Nobody talks about health of individuals who are going to use the building. I think Vijay has a point to add. Yes, Vijay, you're on mute.
The strangest
Vijay,
thing.
you are on mute.
Yeah, now I'm on mute. The strangest thing about building a hospital is none of your operation theaters, your ICUs, or any of your NICUs are supposed to have any ventilation except for a duct for an air handling unit, which is supposed to run 24/7, so many cycles an hour, change your air and all that. If by chance you have been foolish enough to believe that, okay, fresh air will come in, you have adequate windows, cross ventilation, let the sun stream in, you are a fool, you will be NABH disqualified. That is the tragedy of the time. And when I understand that some places you need to have some kind of a control over what kind of air is coming in.
Yes.
But does it mean that for a room 20 by 20, I have to invest 8 lakhs for an air handling unit, power guzzler, Does it make any sense? I have run my NICUs because I was a beginner in this before technology came in. Nice big windows, sun streaming in, a possibility of cutting down the bright sunlight when you need to. But no, that now Amit said we should speak up about it. God forbid I speak up about it. I think I'll get 10 raps on my 10 knuckles, and probably they'll also remove my NABH certification. Now that's what we
Dr.
are.
Suja wanted to add. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going to come on the
Dr.
infection
Suja
control.
added it. Yeah.
I was going to also come on the infection control side. The operating theaters, NICU, are sort of exceptions to the rule. They are absolutely important. Nobody will think of using that. But so yes, that's an example of how you could. But I think one thing I'd like to say is, why are we not working on making use of our natural resources, i.e. the sun? We talk about heat becoming a problem in our life, whereas that is also a source of energy for us. Why do we not have, certainly in hot climate countries, solar panels everywhere, using the solar energy as the main source of our activity? But that's a question that has always bothered me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise that here. Maybe somebody could give us an answer to that. Yeah, we as a part of our infection control, this thing, certainly in my professional life, we've had to work very closely with the building industry. So building hospitals and building theaters particularly, and the air ventilation, etc. So I think there's a lot we can do when we understand, we ask the right questions, and together we can come up with innovative answers, innovative ways of doing it. And together we can find ways of doing it. Theaters and NICUs, etc., could be, certainly would be exceptions, but that's not required to do for everything. You know, you talked about buildings and having what you call glasses. You know, you're really creating greenhouse effect in your already hot countries, or even for us. So I think there's a lot of mindset changing that is required. And I think this conversation is a good start, and we should perhaps make it a much more amenable to other people, even if they have not participated, and try make them realize what they're missing. So.
Thank you, Dr. Suja.
Thank you,
So,
Dr. Suja. And Dr.
Dr.
I mean, Mr. Raj, can I start my presentation? Very short presentation.
Yes, you have
of
8
the project.
minutes to go, so we have some schedule, so you can start and get for your presentation and wrap up.
Yeah. So, okay. Can you?
We
Are
can
you able
see
to
your
see my
screen.
screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I actually from CGBMT, from Center for Green Building Materials and Technology, in the beginning of March, actually, we had our first advisory committee meeting, and even Rajshekhar was there, and we had other environmentalists that were there in the meeting, and we were talking about what is the most current problem that we should be addressing in this particular year. We had Dr. Nitin Pandit also from the Atri Foundation, the director. We had many other very eminent people, Dr. Yellappa Reddy sir, who's a very environmentalist from Karnataka. So we all had taken a decision about taking up mass gathering as a issue, and how to really solve it. And in that, there were several categories actually. Mass gathering, it can be the transportation, schools and colleges, universities. But we thought we will focus on 2 main mass gatherings at the moment, which actually really need a lot of attention, and they actually go out of control in most of the time. And those 2 were actually, this is something like a definition. I will come to that topic. That it has been defined by the World Health Organization as an occasion, either organized or spontaneous, where the number of people attending is sufficient to strain the planning and response resource of the community, city, or nation hosting the event. And these gatherings actually they actually present their own unique challenges to public health and other risks, as I think all the speakers spoke already, and have been the greatest challenge for avoiding infections during pandemics and also for tackling huge environmental pollution, which I think Dr. Amit, as he was talking about the pollutions from the this thing. The other two projects that we actually envisaged, one was for ecotourism in biodiversity hotspots, where, as you can see now, we know that even at the summit of the Everest, we have a lot of garbage that has already been dumped there by many more people, which is actually affecting the biodiversity of the place. And we also have during the COVID had so many news items and lot of hot debates on the TV about mass gathering at religious places. And these are two topics we thought that we will take it up, and the way we will take it up is what I will, and this actually which we thought at first, we actually, when we did it in the beginning of March, we were thinking about the environmental impact of mass gathering, and health automatically came into the picture because we thought of the health of the planet means health of the human being. But we have been trying to reach to people and trying to address, they probably don't understand the connection between the environmental impact of mass gathering to the health of human beings, which they think is absolutely a different topic altogether. So later, and just 10 days or 20 days into the project, and we had this COVID-19 was suddenly the fever gripped the world, and we and the whole the world got paralyzed with all life completely getting stopped everywhere. But the whole thing is, when you live in a society, as I think Dr. Souza also was talking, we need to gather and we need to meet people in different places. So that is a part of daily life. This further confirmed our belief that this subject is of gathering is of paramount importance, and the health aspect has to be factored into it to convince people for the behavioral changes. And we have been trying to send and we are actually formally launching it today. Informally and soft launch we have been sending to different colleges, and we have about 5 to 6 colleges who have come, and universities who have come forward, where we are introducing this as a project in the beginning. And the different steps that will be there, I mean, these are the various problem statement, which I think already have been spoken of by all the speakers. So I will not go into a lot of detail about it, but these are the, whatever we spoke, this is the scope of engagement with different organizations that we are looking at. And there will be a preliminary study. This is overall a 3 years program that we are looking at with a study, and there's a concept scheme and feasibility study, which will be stage 2. And then we will have these prototypes and documentation of the total process. And then we have actual execution on the site. And then we have the revision of documentation, which can be made, which will be made further into a publication and also a traveling exhibition, which can travel to different places across the country and abroad. So this is the total scope of engagement which we have discussed with several colleges. And in this forum today, I also want to request the medical fraternity and the energy sector, the science sector, and many other people to actually come forward and try to, as we have seen in this particular webinar today, this is of absolutely paramount paramount importance that this particular topic is discussed in schools and in colleges and at various forums to really be able to get to a solution. And what CGBMT will be doing is, like, we have done a scheme design, and we will be we already have an expert panel, but we are also adding to it. And as I have requested Dr. Souza also to join us, and it is very incidental that Rajshekhar has brought Dr. Souza, who is also a part of a mass gathering global network. And I was so overwhelmed and so extremely happy that that he is going to be part of this webinar, where I'll be announcing formally this particular project. So we are looking at, if I say in a very, I mean, all this whatever is there on the screen, other than that, I can just try to explain to you. is like we'll be doing a preliminary study where we identify the objective. Let's suppose, for example, I take a temple. So in a temple, in if every day we have about 200 people who actually visit the temple in about 24 hours or 12 hours of when it opens. Suddenly on certain days, maybe about 5 days or 6 days in a year, it goes to 1 lakh people, and 1 lakh people in a space where it cannot take the load of so many people, and all the facilities, all the infrastructure is completely stressed to it seems. And the discussion yesterday which he had with Dr. Suja, I think he has done study on Sabrimala. He has done study on. He was telling also some people whom he knows had done the study of a similar kind of thing. How do we actually look at? How do we actually try to see that these things happen, but we also have the environmental and the health impacts factored in. So we are looking at this public safety, public health, crowd management, and environmental. These are the risks that we had thought that we will have. And then we will have the assign the risk priorities. Then they conduct primary research and build network of collaborators. It means they can be the temple authorities, they could be the tourism operators, they could be the PWD, they could be also the the local governance which is there. If it is a village, it could be a gram panchayat. If it is a small town, it could be the municipality. And we get them all together to first identify the objectives, and this we want to close by July 2021, and then set to a goal which will go to stage 2. And in stage 2, we will be doing the risk analysis, we will be doing the FEMA analysis, and then further this identification. I think we already, yeah, some of the major identification risk that we have identified is like crowd management, fire, environmental, and public health and ambience. And how do we actually improve on that? So these are the different surveys that we have already created, which we will be sharing with the organizations, whoever come as a partner with us on this project. And there's some of the concerns that we wanted to say that, to keep it simple. And we also will be having a committee which will be there in each organization, and we will be having our meetings together to how this project actually goes through. By reviews, by periodical reviews, by periodical webinars where we can have gathering of experts who actually speak on the subject. So today was the first one that we had, and that's how we are trying to take it forward. And this was the second, the objective, if you can see here, to understand the scale of operations that we require to provide. And suppose I say, I give it to an architecture college. So what are the temporary infrastructure? Can we have collapsible toilets? Can we have folding tents? And can we have these kind of things which can actually take care, and they can be reused? They are not thrown, and so that we don't have much of wastage, waste or something like that, which actually again pollution, which is going to pollute the whole atmosphere. And from that point to the next point, it becomes a marathon task to actually manage the whole and clear the whole mess of whatever is created out there. So these are the things which we will be giving it to the people. Similarly, with ecotourism, we want people to be taking up certain biodiversity hotspots, because there actually ecotourism was started to make people evolve for the well-being of the tribal people or the indigenous people and nature, and not to disturb them. But there are a lot of negative effects which has happened, as we all know, that it is always overcrowded, it is always over messed up because of the way people actually behave, because they're the way they behave in a city, and they throw things around. They go and do the same thing in the biodiversity hotspot, and it is really there's no concept of what is the limit to the acceptable change that we can actually do in biodiversity hotspots, and because of which we are actually, what we said as the Anthropocene or whatever, we are actually we are going towards that. So this second project, again, in the similar manner, we are looking at the ecotourism. And as we know, COVID, the man and the wildlife conflict has contributed to zoonotic diseases, which actually come to the human beings, because we are trying to intrude into jungles and forests where we should not have actually been there. And because of that, this is also a health risk factor which we wanted to connect the people to this. So this is something which, again, similar to the religious mass gathering, we have prepared a whole series of questions and characteristics of this. And we would be most happy for organizations to come forward and partner with us, in this particular project to take it forward. And I would really request Dr. Suja to put us up. I'm also now stopping the share. This is stop share. Yeah. So that was a very, I know I rushed through the thing, but that is the idea was since already spoken by all the speakers. I just wanted to relate to it that we already had a project in mind, and incidentally this COVID thing happened, and we really realized the importance of it to do it at a large scale. And we would be happy if a lot of organizations come forward and work with us on this project. And with this, actually, Raj, can I wrap it up, or you have something?
Yeah, Neelam, fantastic. You are doing some very good work, and it's our privilege to be a part of small piece of contribution from us. But you are doing some fantastic work. Keep the good work going, and happy
Thank you.
to be of.
Can I wrap up? Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, because time is running out. I think people are really thinning. I am really surprised, actually, but no problem. I heartily thank the speakers, Dr. Suja, Dr. Amit, and Dr. Vijay Shekhar, and our moderator, Mr. Rajshekhar. It has been a very good session and very good discussion, despite the fact that we didn't have overwhelmingly number of speakers, number of participants here. But I will make sure that this is put on the YouTube and this message goes to many more people. And I thank Professor Dr. Prem Kalra, Director DEI, Deemed University, Agra, who has been silently taking a university to a value-based and ecological education hub with culture and cutting-edge technology going hand in hand. All our simple talks is being hosted by the Dalbagh Education Institute of Agra. And the architecture department, I have architect Molly Caprihan, head, and architect Piyush, whom you met in the beginning. He is actually faculty in the Department of Architecture, and he has been silently behind the screen. He has been doing all the technical coordination for us all the time. And thank you, Piyush. Thank you, Piyush, for being such a support all the time. Yeah, you can show yourself to everyone, because I think that's a very important part, and you just keep doing silently. I also thank all of you participants for actively participating in the webinar with a lot of enthusiasm. The next in our series of simple talks is on two, again, more, they are also on air. One is on wind energy, and the second one, which I think we discussed slightly today, is on natural ventilation and sick building syndrome. Yeah, the next two, simple talks that we have on air. Air is one of our basic requirements. Like you can't breathe, you can be without food, but you cannot be without air. Even for a very small time. But people somehow probably don't realize that fact. I will just put a small quote, although again, already it has been spoken. Air pollution is one of the top 5 risk factors for health worldwide, with over, I think, so many millions of deaths, as we saw, due to outdoor and indoor pollution. But I think, as it was pointed out by all the 3 speakers and Mr. Raj, it is not the air pollution that is harmful. It is the rat race that we humans are in. That is what is toxic. And I think we need to really take ourselves out of that mindset. And I think that's what is a takeaway that I would like to put in this. I leave you with this thought as to what you want to do, to ponder on what should be your new normal, and the format when you are using all the gadgets around you and you keep aspiring for more. Thank you once again. Stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shuja, Dr. Amit, and Dr. Vijay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shuja. Thank you, Dr. Vijay. Thank you, Rajan.
Yeah. Thank you, Suja.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye.